I'd like to first of all introduce Kylie Emonson, Orange Door Service System Navigator. And there's no other person, is there? Deborah, no. Through the Orange Door.
Thank you. I haven't had an applause in a long time. That was lovely. Let me clarify too that on the agenda it says that I'm Service System Navigator with the Mallee. I've actually just moved from the Mallee last week and I'm now the Service System Navigator in Loddon. So I've moved from operational to implementation phase, so this is all a little bit new for me as well. All right, how do I work this? Middle one? Cool. Obviously, there was a really significant piece of work in 2016 in relation to the Royal Commission into Family Violence, and they made critically 227 fundamental recommendations in relation to changing the system of family violence. One of the key components that we're involved in is what was at the time called the Support and Safety Hubs, and we've now been renamed as the Orange Door. Ultimately, there's going to be 17 Orange Doors across the state of Victoria, and at the moment we have 5 in operation and 3 that are in implementation. The Orange Door is a new way for children, families, young people experiencing family violence and concerns around child wellbeing to access the support service system. It doesn't replace the existing support specialist systems that are out there. We are recognised as being safe and accessible. We're in often really prominent locations within our communities. Initially, we've had funding for a Orange Door within each of the regions, and then further work is being done around the spokes and the access points for other people across regions that are obviously quite large in geographic location. One of the major changes that's occurred is the fact of our focus on keeping the perpetrator to account, and for the entire service system and the specialist service systems to ensure that they're kept in view, accountable for what's occurring with the victim survivor, the children and the young people. The Orange Door is an access point for all L17 referrals, which are family violence referrals from Victoria Police. We're also the central referral point for all Child First wellbeing referrals. Our other key referral point is often through child protection, which comes through to Child First as well. The adult male victims still are referred through to what you would know as the Victim Support Agency or VAP in your communities as well. Victim survivors of family violence can access services through the Orange Door, however the referrals when they're L17s go through to those other access points. Okay, so I said that there's 5 of us open at the moment. So there's the Mallee, there's Inner Gippsland, North East Melbourne, known as NEMA, Barwon and Bayside Peninsula. The next 3 implementation areas are Goulburn, Central Highlands and Loddon. And it is anticipated that we'll have all 17 rolled out by the end of 2021. And at the moment we're hoping for Loddon to be rolled out by the end of 2019. Now these are some really good videos on YouTube if you want to Google Family Services or the Orange Door. I don't have the time to do it today, but they're worth having a good look. One's an example of how workers feel within the Orange Door, and it's a bit of an introduction there as well, so worth having a look. There's been some really key learnings from the workers that are within the Orange Door already, and this points to a couple of the comments that they've made. I guess what's been really important, let's say for the third one there, having 2 workers going out together, both Child First and the Specialist Family Violence Services, is a new way of creating collaboration and practice. It's great to bounce ideas off each other and learn from each other. This is what the Orange Door is all about, collaborating around good safety planning and meeting children's needs first. That's a common theme that I've heard consistently when I've been in the operational land, is the learnings that they're gaining from one another. They're enhancing their own capacity, they're enhancing their own strengths and the knowledge that when they go and work with families, they can put on different lenses and then go back to the specialist services and ask further questions. It's certainly changed the world that we work in. Now, I've got a really big slide pack, so don't mind me. There's a lot that we need to move on from. Okay, cool. So this is the Orange Door team. We have the hub manager in Loddon. That's Deborah McCormick over here. Say hi. And we have the hub leadership group. Then there's the Orange Door team. So the team is made up of perpetrator services, specialist family violence services, Aboriginal services, Child First and community-based child protection. Our other key partners are also Victoria Police and DHHS. And then we have the broader service system that supports the Orange Door and that we work with really closely. So they're your family service agencies that we allocate to and make referrals to, other agencies like yourself in hospitals and health services. And ultimately we're going to be looking at how we can support some co-location. So there's been a couple of Orange Door sites where they're starting to work with legal services and homelessness services to expand what's available to people when they're entering into the Orange Door. Really exciting times, and that's worked exceptionally well so far. Okay, physical location. I don't know how many of you have actually been into an Orange Door already, but if you have the time or if there's one in your region, it's definitely worth going having a look. They're exceptionally welcoming. They're quite tactile and textural. Really nice colours, big pieces of furniture that you're able to move around, but they're not easily lifted and thrown across the space. They have a couple of reception areas, which also makes it really comfortable if you're wanting to separate people and make them safe within that space. There's lots of security features that are in the Orange Door, and if you're able to make the time to go and have a look, please do so. I think it's also really important for you to have a look if you're making warm referrals for clients as well. It makes a difference if you feel safe and comfortable and you already recognise what the space is like to then take your clients in there as well. So check it out. And as the locations expand, make the time to have a bit of a look. Also, if you watch the videos, you'll get an idea of what the spaces look like too. So there's been a significant amount of reform, and I note that Fran's going to catch up with you later on in relation to the Marram, but just in recognising the fact that there's been some really key reform pieces in relation to risk management, information sharing, etc., which also impacts the Orange Door as well and how we work with one another. It's very much an integrated practice model that we have within the Orange Door. And it is about, as the example that I gave you from the staff member reflects, it's about the fact that we learn off one another. Yes, we have our specialisations, however, we're able to upskill in some of the key questions that we may ask a family when we go on a home visit. It may be around when we're interviewing an individual and we see some behaviours that we may pick up, that then we can go back to a colleague within the Orange Door and have further conversations. So we're upskilling all the time. This is a good example of the information sharing within the Orange Door. So you have your external collection, and of which, within the whole information sharing scheme, there are a wide range of resources that we can access, but also, as I said, we get L17s and Child First referrals, etc. But you also have the FIS and the CIS and the ISC, etc., that determines how we share information. So the hub workers intersect with each other every single day when they're practicing, and they share the information that they may have in their portal. It may be your IRIS system, it may be your DHS database, it may be the knowledge that your Aboriginal practitioners have in the Orange Door around a family that they've worked with previously, and that information shared to begin to support the intake screening and assessment that we do within the Orange Door. It certainly makes a really significant difference to the planning and assessments for our clients. And then, of course, we have the external disclosure there in relation to once we've completed the intake screening and assessment, and we make a referral on about how we share some of that information as well. Oh, sexual information point. This is an interesting one. When we talk about information too, one of the incredible differences that has been made within the Orange Door and our information sharing is around the fact that we can put in a SIT for a perpetrator, and that goes to the Magistrates Court, Victoria Police, DHS Child Protection, Corrections, Magistrates Court, yep, that's the MOP. And what it can do is provide a really accurate picture in relation to the history of that perpetrator, which again can support our screening and assessment that's being undertaken. Sometimes for workers it's an instinct. It's just that feeling where something isn't right when you're reading a case, which I'm sure that most of you have done at one point in your career, and you want to access further information to either support that niggling feeling that you've got or have it disproven. But also, when we look at the information sharing amongst all of our services, it can be one of those things where you know that there's a very extensive history and you want more information. You may want to know when they're about to be released from corrections, and some of that information can be provided through SIP as well. So that's made a really fundamental difference to how we practice. Aboriginal people, critical in relation to supporting self-determination within the Orange Door. We have an advanced Aboriginal practice leader within our service. We have Aboriginal hub practitioners within our service and partner with the local Aboriginal agency. They ensure that there is a cultural lens across all the work that we do with our Aboriginal clients, and ensure that the links are back in relation to cultural appropriateness in any of the services that we deliver. Again, though, it is self-determination, and those clients have the right to choose which service system they access. Let's say if there's a blockage with our Aboriginal Women's Refuge and they're unable to go into there immediately, we will support them through the mainstream service, but we'll link them back for that further case management beyond that, back to the service of their choice as well. So that's been really critical. We also have an advanced family violence practice leader, and we also have an integrated practice leader. So the amount of skill base that sits within the Orange Door and the specialist expertise is really makes a huge difference. Cool. Diverse communities. I'm timing it well. Within the Royal Commission, there were 12 diverse communities that were highlighted in relation to ensuring that they're able to feel that they can access the Orange Door and have that accessible service. So that can include women who are coming out of prison. It includes our CALD communities. And it's very much about recognising what structures and systems and reforms we can put in place, what little differences we make within building our capacity of our staff training about how to engage with people from the LGBTIQ community. That's really important. So this is ongoing work that we're doing within the Orange Door and obviously at Family Safety Victoria. I don't even think I got to that. Yep. All right, cool. We have a 1-800 number. You can access us via the web, www.orangedoor. We do have the physical premises, as I said, within each of the major regions, hubs. We also are looking at how we can expand that access. So say, for example, in the Mallee, we have another access point that's being worked on in the Southern Mallee, which would be from Swan Hill. But also access points can also take on many different forms. So it can be co-location. It could be in a community like in Robinvale, where I worked, where we're looking at doing some outreach with some of our partner agencies is there as well, if there's the need to go down and support those families too. Referrals can be from anyone. You can be a concerned friend, you can be a practitioner, you can be a professional. We get a wide range of referrals from hospitals, schools, etc. And that's it. I do believe. Hang on. What have we got? 42. Because I've got only a couple of minutes left, so let's go with that. Okay, great. Now it's at time. So anyway, if you want more information about the Orange Door, jump on the web, give someone a call. As I said, go and see the services, and you'd be more than welcome to have a look through. Thanks for your time. I have to grab every bit.
Thank you, Kylie. Thank you very much. Our next presenter is Karen Todd from Barwon Health to talk about co-design process and consumer partnerships. Thank you.
Lower that down a bit. Hi everyone. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land and also acknowledge survivors of family violence in the room today. My name's Karen, and I'd also like to acknowledge my team that's here with me today. Peter, Alex, Sky and Kim, Julie, Deb, Lorraine, Andrea and Josie, all from the Barwon Shriv, and also Erin, who's joined us in this work from the Hive Collective. I've got one of those funny slides that move. So from the outset, our Shriv started early 2018, so we're a little bit later to the game. Our regional steering committee was very keen to have the consumer voice at our regional and governance level. Unfortunately, we really struggled with achieving this. Our consumer programs that we had in our organisation really felt they didn't have anyone that could fit that remit, and they weren't sure how to go about it and didn't want to cause harm. I contacted a number of organisations that I thought might be able to help, such as Safe Steps and the Victims Advisory Centre, but they also felt they couldn't help us in this instance. So their advice was to turn to our local family violence specialist service. So we did. We contacted our Barwon Sexual Assault Family Violence Centre, and we've met with them, and now we're partnering with them where we have consumers that have been through their program that are on the other side, obviously still living with, being survivors of family violence. So as well as having consumers join with us, we also wanted to have a better understanding of how we as a health service can provide a safe and supportive environment for people coming to us experiencing family violence. And we heard through the grapevine, talking too close?
Yeah.
That...
You're having to lean back too much.
Okay, thank you. That Erin O'Donoghue from the Hive Collective would be a good person for us to speak to. Erin has experience in working with organisations looking at utilising a human-centred design approach. So how do you engage in a positive way with consumers? So we looked at this and we thought one of the first things we would do would be to run a workshop. So we did this back in February this year, where we had 5 women, survivors of family violence, Erin and ourselves, get together, and we use what's called a human-centred design approach. This design approach has a long and varied history with many interpretations and methodologies and levels of success. Basically, it puts the consumer at the centre of the problem or the issue that you're wanting to look at, and it engages them in various ways and different stages through the process. It's an iterative process, and it involves checking back with consumers at a number of points to ensure that their ideas and needs are met, and that what we're thinking is what they're thinking. So just to give you an overview of the workshop that we ran back in February, the goal of our workshop was to uncover and further understand the victim-survivor experience. We wanted to create a safe space for open discussion through some thoughtfully and sensitively designed activities, which we could spend an hour telling you about those, but if you have more questions, we can tell you at another time. But Erin worked very closely with us and the SAF Centre in designing those. So we wanted, as I said, a deeper understanding of women's experience to help us in designing our response to them. And we also wanted to look at how we could engage in the future with consumers in this space. The SAF Centre also provided us with a specialist counsellor who was on site while we were running this workshop. And also after the workshop, we met with both Kim and Sky to get their feedback on the outcomes of the workshop and whether our understandings were the same as their understandings. So some of the observations of the workshop: the participants were very engaged in the session. They openly shared their feelings and experiences and their thoughts and views. Lots and lots of discussion. Overall, the feeling was that it was a positive experience and they felt heard. They were able to share their experiences. The group format appeared to work well. It wasn't something that we normally do, but in a group setting it did work well. The conversations flowed and there were lots of activities. For example, we looked at what is a perfect health professional as far as a response to family violence, and it was really interesting what came out of that. We also wanted to be careful as far as re-traumatising people, so we tried to put considerations in place with this as we worked through the workshop. Just some very high-level insights from the afternoon. It was a 3-hour workshop. The women communicated a sense of vulnerability, isolation, and a feeling of being totally alone when experiencing family violence. But they also shared stories of incredible strength and resilience. The impact of being told for years that you're to blame for everything that goes wrong, that you're evil, crazy, etc., can be life-lasting. Support services are focused on the crisis management and the pointy end, and there was a real feeling that there's nothing much for the longer-term support for victim survivors. And the other strong theme that came out, that there's a real lack of support for the children of the women who've experienced the family violence. Some further high-level insights were that we were able to confirm, which is what the SHRIV says, that a negative interaction with a healthcare professional when disclosing family violence, whether that's explicit or otherwise, can have a significant impact on a person's trust and their feelings of being able to disclose again. But the authenticity and intention of a person offering assistance is more important than having answers or being able to come up with an outcome. So it goes back to what Trail was saying about kindness, compassion, and being real. That came through very strongly. The other strong theme there was that the point of leaving is not the point at which someone feels safe. In addition to feeling alone and fearful, there are so many other challenges that the women face at this time. From a health response perspective, the women's experiences of the healthcare setting were mixed. Some had positive experiences, others had very difficult interactions, which resulted them in feeling very judged and alone. Their expectation of us, as what we need to provide, is that they want to be heard, not judged, helped and supported in their decisions, and they want the worker to be honest that if they don't have an answer, they will demonstrate their care by following up. So you don't have to know it all, but you'll go away and find out. And something as simple as asking, "How can I help you?" can have a huge impact. From an information and supports perspective, there was a strong feeling that we have a role, healthcare workers have a role in providing information and guidance on what constitutes family violence. And this was about building awareness so that people can start to self-identify what's occurring in their own lives. So there was a push for having information available more broadly, for example, on the back of toilet doors, to help build people's awareness around what family violence is. There was the message that support services are very stretched, which results in those already feeling vulnerable and alone, feeling like no one is listening. And the other strong theme here was around the ongoing and longer term supports being really lacking, and particularly once the immediate crisis is over, that they drop away. The third strong theme that came through is around safety, and we've heard a lot of that today, that healthcare workers have a really important role in the area of planning for safety. It came out that early introduction of this concept is important if that's possible, so trying to get this information through to people earlier rather than at the point of crisis, because it can be really difficult to process that when you're in a crisis. Safety needs change over time, and it's important to revisit this and ask the woman what she's doing to minimise risk and offer her the opportunity to discuss what she feels is important from a safety point of view. The moment when women feel most unsafe is when they leave the perpetrator, and as they lose, the perpetrator loses control and the woman loses sight of where that perpetrator is and what they're doing. The other thing that came out was that a lack of somewhere safe to go. So often, I suppose, the health service is the only known safe place, but even then, busy emergency departments and waiting rooms aren't necessarily seen as a safe place to go when you need to go. Some further ideas and opportunities that we're following up on. How do we incorporate this learning to better equip our employees? How might we share the stories that we heard with a broader audience? How do we need to think about our role in providing a safe space for women and children 24/7? As we know, Safe Steps over the phone at the moment is it. How do we think about building in that longer term support? We heard very strongly that support is very short term, so whose role is that to provide that longer term support? How do we go about distributing information out to the public around what is family violence and what's the best way of doing that in a safe way? Safety planning came through very strongly in how we do that as a health service and do it well and effectively. So I think they were the main themes. So lastly, I would like to thank these people up on the screen, particularly thank the women who shared their insights with us. And we continue to do further work in this space. And one of our consumers has highlighted to me that it's really important when you're doing this work to ask, why is it important to have the consumer voice? Because if we ask that question, then hopefully we can respond to it well. So we'll continue to do this work and learn from this. So that's us. If anyone has any questions, you're very welcome to contact us. Thank you.
Thanks, Karen. Just, see if I can get this. Claudia from Bass Coast Health, building partnerships and linking with the Change for SAM strategy.
Thank you. Hi everybody, I'm Claudia from Bass Coast Health. Who here has been to Phillip Island? Okay. What do you think of when you think of Phillip Island? Penguins? Yep, race cars, or motorbikes I should say, yep. So Phillip Island is part of the local government area that Bass Coast Health services, and it is a well-known holiday destination. The population swells by over 3 times during holiday seasons, and we do know that family violence increases while people are on holidays. So I guess that's a little bit of context about what I'm going to talk about today. But just to give you a bit more about the Shrew, Bass Coast Health is the cluster lead. We have 2 partners in our cluster. I'm talking specifically today about the Change for SAM, which is set in Bass Coast, but it interfaces with our Shrew project. So I just want to frame that a little bit. So Change for SAM. On the 23rd of July 2018, Samantha Fraser, a Phillip Island resident, mother of 3, psychologist, park runner, daughter, sister, beloved community member, was found deceased in her home. And I won't talk much about that simply because it's currently waiting to be heard in court. Suffice to say, there were questions about how she died. as a consequence, the Phillip Island community in particular, but Bass Coast more broadly, and I think, you know, women, men, Victorians, Australians, responded, I think, by recognising themselves somewhat in Samantha's death. I think particularly coming from a health service perspective. Sam was our colleague in the private sector, but our colleague. She was very well known in a small community, and those of you from rural and regional health services will have experienced the singular boundary challenges of working in those areas. So the ripple effect was significant, and what happened is that as a Bass Coast Health employee, quite integrally involved with the process immediately following Sam's passing, we as a health service felt it was very important to exercise our responsibility to support the well-being of the community in the face of such a trauma. And the community was traumatised, there's no question about it. There were, the bridge from San Remo to New Haven was wrapped in white ribbons. There were white ribbons all along the main street of Cowes. There were vigils, there were all sorts of community-based responses that were wonderful and healing, but they were full of rage and full of sadness. And we felt, along with the local shire and Victoria Police, that we could perhaps corral some of that energy, which was so distraught and raw, and provide a safe place to express that and to channel that energy into perhaps improving some of the service systems that were maybe not optimal in this case. So that's a little bit of background about Change for Sam. So who was involved in this? Her bereaved family and friends have been involved from the very beginning. And we have her parents who sit on the Change for Sam steering committee. They come and go. It's quite difficult for them. But they've certainly given the Change for Sam strategy their full support, and in fact their permissions for us to go ahead and make this a thing. Interested community members, it's an amazing community, I think, to have so many people just crawl out of the woodwork, didn't know Sam but want to be involved. Gippsland Women's Health, Bass Coast Shire, Bass Coast Health, Victoria Police, and more, many more. So these were the objectives. So we have our initial objectives, which were to protect the community and channel that energy. We've got some medium-term objectives, which were to develop an action plan and to come together as a group in a meaningful way. And the longer-term objectives are around sustainability. The medium-term objectives I'll just speak to very quickly, because I think what I've learned out of this is that the way that Change for Sam has developed was that the first big thing that this community of people coming together decided to do was have a type of forum that was open invitation. It was run by the Gippsland Women's Health, and it was quite structured. It was structured for a reason, and that was to contain and channel the emotion in the room, because it was a highly emotive time. What that then gave was the community of people who were present at that time, which was agency representatives, service providers, community members, etc., and survivors, was a place for them to then say what they wanted. So then Gippsland Women's Health put that into an action plan. So the action plan, or the initial advocacy document, then I guess created a space for the action plan. And sustainability is around, I think I've got a slide in here. Sorry, I left my notes at home, so thanks. So there you go, got some initial actions, which were the forum and setting up two different committees, one which is a reference group or a smaller group sorry, not a reference group, a smaller group, a governance group, which did include her family and her, you know, a couple of her very close friends, and then just some community people and different agencies. What we felt very strongly about was when we put together that group, it was really important that we had a couple of basic values that we stuck to in that. One was that the chair needed to be somebody from the community, not an agency, and that it would have a feminist agenda. The reason being that holding the gendered nature of family violence at the core was something that Sam herself cared deeply about, so it was an easy decision to make that one. Now, the regular meetings, I go to so many meetings, I get really tired of meetings, and one thing that my pet hate around meetings is a meeting that doesn't have a purpose and doesn't have an outcome. So we have regular meetings that are tightly run, and what that does is it keeps the action plan rolling, and it's important to do that. We also have another meeting that happens approximately every, I think we've had 3 or 4 of them now, and they're community consultation meetings. So from that original forum, all of those people can come to those meetings, and there were something like 90 people at that original forum. It was huge. My other tip to how we got this off the ground, and if this ever need to be used for anybody else, was communicate in your meetings, communicate to each other in between, make your authorising environment tight, and have those people talk to each other. You've got to make some tough decisions, and they're important ones. Communicate to your community. They need to know that something's happening. So, progress. We've had a rollout of 40 grand for a part-time coordinator role. So we have a Change for Sam coordinator. That role is, the money sits with Gippsland Women's Health, but that person actually sits in the Bass Coast Health office with Bass Coast Health resources and infrastructure. It's very partnership model, and a lot of support from the Shire. So there's, it's a really good model. We also have a co-location of existing services. So our family violence counselling and outreach services are now sitting together in the same room in both our Cowes and Wonthaggi offices, which is just, information sharing makes it so much better. It's just so much easier, the processes are better. And we have an improved relationship between agencies. One thing I was reflecting on writing this was that after such an event, there can be lots of finger pointing, and it's not always useful. It's often reactive and difficult, so it's made a big difference. The interface with Shrew is really interesting because basically some of the work of Shrew we could plug directly into Change for Sam. The service mapping, making those relationships was so important, and we did support the Change for Sam development. We have people sitting on the same on the committee, so on Shrew and on Change for Sam. We optimised our existing relationship and we communicate together. So we've sent a lot out into local media around family violence. And Bass Coast 4 years ago, was 5th in the state, 5th highest family violence incidents, according to VicPol data. It's now 28th, so we're pretty happy with that. I just wanted to show you this one thing. So 16 days of activism, I just think it can take the smallest little things to make a change. And last year, my CEO challenged me to wear orange every day for 16 days. Orange is not a colour I have in my wardrobe. It is actually difficult to look good in orange, and I pride myself on looking good. But you can see here that I did it, and I was pretty proud of that. So that's just the end of and I'll cut straight to that. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Claudia. I'd say one of the other success factors might be humour. Thank you very much for that. So we have time for questions to the panel.
I'm a bit worn out.
No. Yes.
Hi, I just wanted to make a reflection back to Karen in terms of Thank you for the great work you're doing around consumer partnerships, and I also know that many other Shrev teams are partnering with consumers in their own ways. But for those who are not familiar with what Monash Health is doing in this space, I just wanted to spruik the role they've created for me, which is in the Mental Health and Family Violence Project team. I'm their first family violence lived experience consultant. Wow. And I want to throw back the challenge to other health services to actually create a position like this and embed it in your teams as well.
Well done. Thanks for bringing that to our attention. Anybody else? No, thank you, panel. Thank you very much.